Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to Wishwell Farms. My name is Jason, and in this video, I'm going to be teaching you how to use the world's best tomato trellising system, the Florida Weave. So the Florida Weave system has been used for centuries. It's what all commercial tomato growers are using and can easily be implemented in your own garden for trellising up your tomatoes. So if you're looking for a better way to keep your tomatoes up off the ground and clean, disease-free, and increase your yields, or maybe you're just sick and tired of other trellising methods, stay tuned for this video so you can learn how to use this simple yet effective method for trellising your tomatoes. So here is everything you will need for the Florida Weave trellising system. This is a box of tomato twine, but any string or rope will work. You can even use baling twine. But this is just a nylon tomato twine that comes in this little 3-pound box with like 5 or 10,000 feet. We use that in our field tomatoes as well. Since we are using this method on a lot of field tomatoes, that's why we buy large boxes of string. Most will just use some sort of wooden stake. This is a 1x1 pressure treated pine stake. You can also use steel T-posts. You'll need a pair of scissors for cutting the string and a post pounder for pounding in your stakes. Obviously, I'm in my greenhouse. This is where we grow our grape tomatoes, and they are being grown in Coco Core grow bags. Because it is late March, far too early to have field production happening outdoors, that is why we are filming this video in the greenhouse, but everything I will be demonstrating for you today can be implemented in your garden just the same. You probably noticed that we have steel T-post already in place. Now, when we do this out in our open fields, we use the wooden stakes like I showed you already. We will pound one in every 5 feet down the row, and we'll have 2 plants in between each wooden stake. In the greenhouse, we do it a little bit differently. We leave these in here permanently, and as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, between 5 and 6 plants between each steel T-post. So we're going a little further distance than 5 feet. Just because there's no wind to worry about in here, and since we don't have to remove these, and these are sturdier than wooden stakes, we can go a little further, and we can pack the grape tomatoes together a little tighter than we would our regular field tomatoes, which get 2.5 feet between plants. You can see these are only about 16 inches apart. The grape tomatoes can be crowded just a little bit tighter, but when it comes to field production, growing our regular determinate or garden varieties of red round tomatoes, we like to give them a minimum of 2 feet, but most generally, we like to space them at 2.5 feet apart. Now, out in our fields, at the end of each row, we do use steel T-posts to act as an anchor, but we will use the wooden stakes down the middle of the rows, and then at the other end, we will also put another steel T-post. I probably should mention that if you do have the availability of using steel T-post, I would recommend that, just because if you use the wooden stakes and you happen to go just a little too far of distance between plants, and say they're this tall and full of fruit, have a heavy fruit load, and you get a heavy windstorm after a heavy rain or after irrigating them, there is a chance that they can fall over onto the ground. We've had it happen. I've seen the whole row go down like a line of dominoes. So yeah, steel T-posts will prevent that from happening. Sometimes we will put one in maybe every 10 wooden stakes just to make sure that doesn't happen. One more quick thing here I want to show you before we start stringing. You probably can tell that I have my steel T-post alternated on each side of the bag all the way down the row. So this one's on the right side of the bags, that one's on the left side of the bags, so on and so forth down the row. Now the reason I do that is because I have grow bags laid down and I can't put my T-post through the grow bag. So you won't have to worry about that in your garden or your field because you won't have grow bags laying on the ground, and you can put your wooden stake or your T-post right down the center of the row between your plants. All right, I got my box of string strapped to my waist, and a lot of guys that are doing this in commercial field production have a tool that acts as an extension of your arm so you don't have to squat down or bend over so much. But since I only have 3 short rows about 85 feet long, it's not that big of a deal. I like having better control using my hands. So in your garden, when you transplant your tomatoes, they might only be a foot or a foot and a half tall. These grape tomatoes have been in here for 10 days to 2 weeks, and if they didn't have these bamboo stakes holding them up, they would be falling over by now. See how they just flop right over. So we want to remove these bamboo stakes, but we're not going to do it until I put the second stringing up. So if you are using some kind of temporary staking system like your own bamboo stakes, I like to leave them in there until I have my second run of strings put up. Today we're just doing the first run, down and back. I am right-handed, so I have found it easier in my experience to go counterclockwise around the row if you're right-handed. So our first stringing, I want to put it about 2/3 of the way up the plant. If I did it in the middle, like right here, there's still a lot of plant that's going to flop right over on me. Now, if I didn't have the bamboo stakes here, I probably would have done this a week ago when they were a little shorter. So I'm going to tie my string about 2/3 of the way up the plant. I just wrap it around the T-post twice, tie a double knot in it, and now I'm ready to pull the string down the row. So I want to keep this nice and taut all the way to the next stake. And I would say right there looks like 2/3 of the way up the plants. I'm going to wrap it around the T-post and grab it with my left hand, which was free, holding that tension. That string is like a guitar string. I want that tight. I don't ever let my plants dictate where my string is going to bulge out my string. I want it a straight shot from post to post if possible. Now I'm going to take my free hand now, which was my right hand, and lift that slack up over the post. So now I have a single wrap around the T-post. I'm going to pull it to the next T-post and do the same thing. And I'm going to do that all the way down the row. All right, I'm going to show you a little closer how I wrap this around the stake. So I think I'm going to wrap it right here. I got it with my right hand. It's nice and tight. Pulling it around, grab it with my left hand, not ever letting up on the slack. And now I got this loose string that I can just lift up over the post. And now I have one wrap around the D-post, ready to go on to the next one. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, what's the next step that's going to help hold these plants up off the ground? I'm going to do this all the way to the end, turn around at the final post, and I'm going to come back on the other side doing the same thing. And the plants will be captured between the string. Now, some people like to do like a figure 8 system or a crisscross. They will cross over in the middle of the row to help weave that string a little tighter around the plants. I have never done it that way. I don't believe it's necessary. I think it's a waste of extra time and energy. Now, after the first stringing, there is a chance that the plants could slide left or right in between the string. But as soon as your plants start to bush out and touch each other, they're not going to do that anymore. Same thing with these grapes. They might want to slide back and forth left or right a little bit between the strings, but by the time I do the second and third stringing, they will be so bushy in here, they never even move. So it's not necessary to cross your strings in between your posts. Just go down one side and back down the other. I normally don't have string all pulled out, tangled up around me like this. I just had to do it because I was moving the camera. I didn't want to let up my slack. Around the stake. Up to the stake. Around. So as you can see, the plants are all trapped between the string. It might look like they're leaning just a little bit. That's because I'm zigzagging back and forth to my T-posts since they're not exactly in line. But once the plants grow quite a bit, it looks like a straight row. You won't see them leaning like that. And it's really no big deal that they're leaning because the roots are anchored several inches into these grow bags now. So those plants are held in place and cannot flop over. But they can slide left and right within the string, like I was telling you. That's why some guys like to make an X shape with their string and cross it in the center. And it does help hold them in place better so they can't slide back and forth. But like I already mentioned, once these plants grow up a little bit bigger, they're going to start bushing out and they won't be able to move anywhere. They'll be so thick. So I think it's a lot of extra time and effort involved to do that crisscross method. So I wanted to bring you to the back of the greenhouse to show you what I did at the end of the row. So I came down on this side and I just wrapped right around the post and kept right on going. I would have completely went around the post if I was able to get over the post, but I have these strings or these ropes tied to my wall because of the weight that these things put on eventually. But this works just as good. The string's not going to go anywhere. There's a nice close look of the great job the Florida weave does for trellising tomato plants. So about every week to 10 days, I'll come back out here and run another trellis line above the previous one. So as you can see, my first trellis is probably a good 18 inches off the ground, if not 20 inches. When we do our field tomatoes, our first trellis is probably 8 to 10 inches off the ground because the tomatoes are a lot smaller. So that's probably what it's going to be like in your garden. Your first one's going to be way down close to the ground, just enough to keep those plants off the ground. And then once they start growing up, you're going to probably want to put a string every 8 inches to 12 inches. You might be able to get away with every 15 inches. In here, we do about 7 or 8 inches because these are grape tomatoes. They're very prolific, heavy yielders, and I just feel like I have tomatoes, grape tomatoes falling out everywhere if I don't put a string every 7 or 8 inches. So, you know, I strung these 3 rows up in like less than 10 minutes, so it doesn't take very long. And there's probably about 285 grape tomatoes in here. So, you know, in 10 minutes, I strung up 285 tomatoes. So it's a very quick process, very effective. And I will probably be putting 5 or 6 strings up this post. But that's not enough because in here, these grape tomatoes are going to want to grow at least 7 feet tall. So when they reach the top of the post, I have this little handy dandy PVC extension and it'll set right down on there. Right now, it would just fall all the way down. But when I have my top string up here, which is going to be number 5 or 6, I put this on here. It sets on top that top string, and then that gives me room to run the trellising system 1, 2, or 3 more times, depending on how high the plants are, sometimes all the way to the top of this PVC. And that's usually where they top out. They don't really grow any taller than 7 feet. These are determinate tomatoes, so they would probably only grow about 5 feet tall out in the field, but in here in this controlled environment, they usually get about 7 to 7.5 feet tall for me. Now, a lot of garden varieties that you may be putting in your garden, like Better Boy, Big Beef, Early Girl, you know, all those common names that you know, those are indeterminate. And they can often grow, as you know, taller than 7 feet. So if they have a great growing season, a long growing season, and perfect growing conditions, they'll never stop growing as long as they have heat, moisture, feed, and light. So a lot of times you'll see the tops flop over on you. So using a steel T-post that gets you up a little higher and putting an extension on here like this will allow you to keep those from flopping over as bad. You can get them almost to 8 feet high off the ground. Hey, there's a busy bee doing a great job pollinating my tomatoes. Just wanted to give you a quick example of a different style of trellising. These are indeterminate plants. These will be 20 feet long by the end of the season. They would be taller than my 18-foot tall greenhouse. So we attach them to the string that we have dropped from the trellis cable above, and when they reach the hook, we unwind the hook and we slide it over. So the plant will drop and it will lean. And we'll do that to all of them in a clockwise fashion in this greenhouse. So just want to give you a quick look at a different style of trellising that we use on our hydroponic tomatoes in our larger greenhouses. this probably wouldn't work too well in your garden. But if you do have a greenhouse and are considering trellising from a cable system up above, this is a great method. I realize there are many different trellising methods being used these days, but the Florida Weave system has worked great for us on our operation. Let me know down in the comments what trellising method you are currently using and whether or not you're considering using the Florida Weave system this year in your garden. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something today. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, and consider subscribing for more gardening and farming content. This is where we're going to wrap this one up today, folks. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all again real soon down on the farm.